The 4th of July is defined by its noise. We have the fireworks, the parades, and soaring speeches about the promise of freedom. But then the sun comes up on the 5th. The confetti settles, the streets are empty. We treat the 4th as a finish line, the moment the ideal of liberty was permanently etched into history. But history is rarely made in a single triumphant burst of color. It is built in the quiet, unglamorous hours that follow. The holiday acts as a necessary symbol, but if you look at the historical record, July 5th is when the actual systemic work of building the modern world takes place. In the summer of 1852, the Ladies' Anti-Slavery Society of Rochester invited the abolitionist Frederick Douglass to deliver an address celebrating the 4th of July. Douglass accepted the invitation, but chose a different date. He waited until the celebrations ended and stood before the crowd on July 5th. He used that stage to ask a blistering question: what to the slave is the 4th of July? He laid bare the distance between the nation's rhetoric and the lived experience of millions still held in legal bondage. By shifting his speech to the 5th, Douglass forced the country to look in the mirror. He established July 5th as a day of accountability, a time for those excluded from the idealized promises of the holiday to demand the reality. That friction between the promise of liberty and its achievement plays out across the globe. For Venezuela, Algeria, and Cape Verde, July 5th marks their national sovereignty. In 1811, the Venezuelan Declaration of Independence fractured Spanish colonial rule, eventually spreading across the continent. Jump to 1962, and the streets of Algiers are filled with a different kind of celebration. After 8 years of grueling guerrilla warfare, Algeria officially proclaimed its independence from France. In 1975, the same transition reached the Atlantic coast as Cape Verde declared its independence after centuries of Portuguese rule. National sovereignty is rarely secured during a parade. It is finalized in the grinding aftermath of revolution, making the 5th a day of geopolitical delivery. But drawing a new border is only half the battle. The other half is building the legal frameworks that turn an abstract right into a functional protection. On July 5, 1935, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the National Labor Relations Act. This law institutionalized worker protections in the United States, giving the government the authority to enforce the right to collective bargaining. Across the Atlantic, on July 5, 1948, the United Kingdom launched the National Health Service. The move replaced a fragmented private system with a national public health structure, guaranteeing care based on clinical need rather than the ability to pay. In 1971, political power shifted again as the 26th Amendment was formally certified, lowering the voting age to 18 and bringing millions of young citizens into the democratic process. This pattern of legal delivery brings us back to the legacy of Frederick Douglass. In 1827, the state of New York officially abolished slavery. To mark the moment their freedom became a legal fact, Black New Yorkers established the 5th of July as their own historic day of celebration. Human progress does not survive on philosophical declarations alone. It survives through the granular, binding legislation enacted on days exactly like this. The impact of this date even extends beyond the laws of human society. It touches the foundational laws governing physical reality itself. On July 5, 1687, Isaac Newton published Philosophia Naturalis Concipia Mathematica. In its pages, he unified the motion of objects on Earth with the movement of the stars. By quantifying gravity and motion, Newton provided the first predictive model for the physical world. This date anchors the transition of physics from a branch of philosophy into a rigorous mathematical science. When you look at the calendar, a pattern emerges. July 5th is a day defined by ink drying on pages, the finalization of revolutions, and the establishment of hard facts. Parades and holidays are necessary for morale, but the actual machinery of progress relies on the labor that resumes the moment the fireworks end. The next time you wake up to a quiet street scattered with confetti, remember the history. You are waking up to the anniversary of the hard work that actively changes the world.